I just want to do a quick blog about the BBC because I saw the Jimmy Saville program on Netflix, which I hadn't seen before, and just wanted to go over my own dealings with the BBC when they wanted to interview me about working for the Daily Mail. They worked in conjunction with Hacked Off because after they interviewed me, they then, with Hacked Off and the lawyers, started legal proceedings against the Mail. I think that's not really right because there's lots of people that read the Mail that pay their licenses to the BBC. They don't really expect the BBC to be working for Hacked Off, but I do believe in this instance it's because they have their hands out for payoffs through Hacked Off, through serving legal court cases for compensation of so-called victims. I think it's a phone hacking compensation's gotten a little bit out of hand. If you're famous, celebrity, well known in the news, you do expect to be written about. That comes with the territory, especially if you go into the arts. And I was written about mainly because I visited a serial killer. Not once have I been offered by Evan Harris or anybody else to either tell my story of abuse by the press or to attempt to get compensation. Why? Because they don't really care about working class people. They haven't helped Brian Harvey. He lost his entire career. All they care about is their rich and influential friends. And I was threatened by one of them, and I still do feel in danger by this particular person. But I have his home address. If I'm ever touched, I will know that it's him. And I've got things in place, such as the tape recording of him threatening me, tape recorder of him getting his lawyer to plant cocaine on me, and that will be released to the public. So he really needs to stay back and not come near me, no matter what happens. And I think he won't be very pleased with what happens in the future as regards me and the Daily Mail. So what I really don't like is to be lied to, be abused, have one person come forward and I take offence to what they say, and then that person moves back and they command another person to move forward. I saw them coming and I put things in place to protect me. I am not somebody that sits there and gives to people that I don't like, to people that I believe are conning me, to people that are feigning friendship. I do not give up stuff. I just don't. And if I'm pushed, I will give them anything I feel like giving them in my head, but it won't be anything near the truth. And sadly, that's the way I react because I don't like being pushed about. The BBC are staffed now, it seems, by people that are really thick, and I don't think they are actually evil. They're just stupid. They just actually shocked at the stupidity. So as regards Jimmy Savile, I think there's just the they're just brain dead. They just don't have sensitivities. They don't. And if you're that stupid, you tend to not have a moral compass. So the moral compass is way down on the floor. So who's ever staffing the BBC at the moment, they just don't seem to care. They just let in any dross. And it's probably because getting a job there is who you know. And if you know somebody, you'll get in. And by using this method, they get staff that aren't professional, that are amateurish, that are very bad with dealing with other people. So this is what we have with the BBC. So I just wanted to say that to put it out there because it's really bad to be dealt with by people that aren't capable of dealing with other people, that they're journalists but they don't want the truth. They just want what they think they want to lick around other people. The people that have been licked around are celebrities and people who they see as having power, and it just doesn't make for good journalism or good television or enlighten the public in any way, because celebrities are celebrities. Celebrities aren't gods. They're nowhere near it. They're just people usually that are lucky enough through privilege to get into acting, singing, all the arts. They're not angels, certainly not. But if you treat them such and put them out there to the public as such, it's a lie. And the public are getting onto this now. They're sniffing it out. There's a change, and they're not swallowing this whole celebrities are gods and they can do no wrong, even though they're spoon-fed it by the BBC. A lot of people say the BBC are evil and a satanic organisation. I really disagree with that. I don't think so. I just think they are pretty dark side, and they are, you know, fulfilling the agenda of the dark side just because they are stupid, just because the level of intelligence of the staff, even high up staff, is really, really low. They seem to be very, very basic and unthinking people. And they even seem to be quite thuggish as well. It's almost like they've got a load of football hooligans and decided to bring them in and to work there and to make programs. It's like, oh, that bird's pretty fit, isn't she? Yeah, she can do no wrong. Now we've got a bad person play the bad part. Ah, yeah, get there a minute. It's like, say what? Have you no intelligence of the nuances of life? You know, it's not completely good, evil. Even when I was talking about the Daily Mail, they stopped filming, turned the cameras, and they said, oh, we want you to intimate that they're, right wing. And so I carried on talking, and I said, hang on, I'm not getting this. Do you mean like they're like Hitler Youth? And, oh, you can't say that. And I thought, but you're intimating it. You want me to say it. Why not just be honest and come out and say it? So they, instead of letting someone they're interviewing say what they feel, it's better TV. They curate it and actually put words in your mouth and actually censor you. Why not have me saying, oh, you saying that you think the Daily Mail are Hitler Youth? I mean, why not? I said it. Why not carry on filming? But no, you're not allowed to. And apparently, and this really shocked me, I was told by an intelligent journalist that because my testimony, my truth, what happened to me with the Sun, because it jarred with Sienna Miller's testimony, they couldn't put it out there. And this is why I was trod on. It's the word, they trod on me. What the actual fuck? I tell you, in all my years as a journalist, and many, many years, and I got in contact with the media. No, they got in contact with me. When I was 22 years of age, and, I hung out in the wine bars. I dated Phil Hall. I met journalists socially. I was a victim of that world. I was someone they wrote about before I entered it. And I never met such a scumbag as this so-called journalist that trod on me, as I was told it's called. Just didn't want the truth. Absolutely didn't want the truth. I see now why they were banging on about Jude Law. They really wanted me to say that I checked out Sienna Miller was pregnant, when the only thing I was asked to check was that she had had an abortion by Rebecca Brooks. They're not interested in Brooks. Why? Because they know she's so powerful and they can't reach her. I mean, they're so just nauseatingly piss poor, pathetic individuals that it's an easy target. Let's grab that. They really remind me of football hooligans at a really base level. Oh my God. I wouldn't even believe it if someone was telling me. I'd think to myself, no, surely to get a good job somewhere like the BBC, you have to at least have an IQ above that of an Alsatian dog. But they seem, certainly this department, which is the news department, certainly everyone there seems to be really like thick as mash, and so have the sensibilities of just gangsters. But someone I met in conjunction with Hacked Off, I know they're not with them anymore, has that same, and I'm not talking about Graham Johnson. Graham Johnson is out there. He is who he is. He is a gangster. He acts like it. I accept him, in ways I quite like him, even though he certainly shit on me over and over. He is what he is. It's all out there. When you meet him, he constantly taps his titties. That's to just, if you say something he sees as good or exciting, he starts doing that. It's really funny. he must have a tape machine that doesn't work. So whenever I meet him, I always throw in something that I know he will tap it. And he always does, he starts tapping. It's funny. But he is who he is. But this other person who's suited up and makes out, he's upper middle class, he threatened me in front of my child. Like a gangster, like, you know what I mean? Do it in a nice way, the nasty way. Fuck you, bish. But all said in a posh voice, with a suit, and then got his lawyer to threaten to plunk cane on my flat. Well, I went straight to the police with that one. A policeman that happens to be very senior and is a personal friend of mine. And I've got that on tape. And I've got the earlier threat as well on tape. And that's with someone. And no, it's not Sean Breach. I couldn't believe it. They got Greg Miskew to ring me up and say, oh, where have you put these tapes in that you record? Where have you put these tapes of people? And I said, oh, it's, with a friend. And he was going, oh, what friend? And looking through my Facebook and all this kind of stuff. And, a guy had mentioned, and what is it, the guy with the dog? And all this kind of stuff. No, it's not the guy with the dog. It's somebody that's not on my Facebook. I've never spoken about before. And I have got it safely stored with them. So if anything happens to me, if I get cocaine planted on me, if I get duffed up, it will ping back all over the planet, because that's all down there. I can't wait. In fact, do come round, duff me up, mate. So this is these kind of people. They're just like football hooligans. And what motivates them is so pathetic, I can't even get over it, is people-pleasing pretty celebrities like Lily Allen and Sienna Miller. It's like they're never going to sleep with you guys, so give it up. But they sort of want to people-please and lick around them. So pathetic. And one of them, actually, it's not really funny, one of them got so obsessed with Sienna Miller because he met her and apparently she cried. He got so sexually tied up with her. This guy's married, but you know what? Someone should tell his wife, bitch, he's not married to you. If you're mentally jizzing off about another woman, you haven't got a marriage there. Hopefully that will come out. Anyway, this guy, he was actually bullying me so bad. He bullied me into a breakdown. Why? It was because he wanted me to play bad girl to Sienna Miller's good girl princess. But not only that, my testimony was totally in opposition to hers. Now, what you do in cases like that, if you're a journalist with any kind of IQ or brain, you put the two women together. That's what you do. But he was like, oh, no, you can't have that. Well, why can't, oh, I'm beneath her. Oh, am I? What, in the eyes of God? I mean, this is how these people operate. They're not proper journalists, because proper journalists will say, oh, no, that's that superior woman. Well, is that, May, is that what you're going to put out there to the public? So the people are sitting there, the public that have paid their licenses, what, and they're going to get fed through the screen, this person is a superior person, this person is a scumbag. So we can't put them together. The most sensible thing, if somebody is telling a storyline that is in opposition of another person's storyline, especially if they're both women, you put them together. You put the camera tight on their eyes, and you see, okay, he's telling the truth here. And if it doesn't correspond, you work out, well, hang on, let's get to the truth here. Let's get to the truth. But these freaks, these absolute scumbags didn't want that. No, they wanted their version of events. Because my literal truth was this certain event. Now listen, Sienna Miller apparently was going to play me in the film of my book, Searching for Daddy. And it's out there. If you Google Ian Brady and Anthony Hopkins, there it is online. Now, think about what that means. That means whenever the actress Sienna Miller is mentioned to me, well, my ears prick up, because I think, well, hang on, she was in the paper with me. So it's something that resonates with me very, very much when I hear her name, because I immediately think, or even say when somebody brings her up, well, she was going to play me. That wasn't something that came out of my head, by the way. It was something the journalist Justin Penrose, was it, found out. So it rings a bell, a large bell, as it would if somebody, oh, Robert De Niro is going to play you when you have the... Every time you heard the name Robert De Niro, you'd want to leave for, oh, actually, did you know they were going to play me in the movie of my book? So it's a name that rings a massive bell with me. So the one time I was ever asked to do anything remotely connected with Sienna Miller, I was sitting outside my very good friend Hugh Burnett's house. He owns a house. It's like Great Expectations. Sadly, he's died. But still, I told my ex Paul about this as well. So if it ever comes to court, it won't. Sadly, I should have had my time in court. But no, I'm working class. So I don't get my time in court. The rich can talk about you, spread you all over the internet, but you don't have any recourse. They can accuse you of what the fuck they like. Why? Because they're rich. Didn't you know? And then they can get the BBC to back them up. And if you don't go along with it, well, you'll get trod on and harassed to the point where they have to go, ooh, shit, let's call a doctor. And the doctor gets so upset, seems to think that you need emergency treatment because of what they've done. So this is how the BBC behave. So if you're ever asked to go along and be interviewed by them, just say no. And I was told this of friends on Facebook, just say no. Because you might as well think of the worst football hooligans you can. Say Millwall. Think of the guys that are really violent. Millwall. Think of them and think about going into a room with them. Because that is what you are letting yourself in for when you have any dealings with the BBC. Oh, and make sure you're not a Millwall fan, you're something like a West Ham fan. They'll obliterate you. They won't care what you're saying. They won't listen. I mean, every time I spoke, this guy who was interviewing me, he acted like, did someone fart? Or tell it to the hand. Now, you're interviewing me, you absolute stinking individual. You're interviewing me. When you're interviewing someone, you try and find out their truth. You listen to them. They have no listening art of listening. You listen to them. They let someone else called James Hanning interview me. Now, he was the editor of The Independent on Sunday. Yet he interviewed me, covered everything, but apparently not good enough. They had to come in, the Millwall football, and tread on me because my testimony jarred with a Hollywood actress. And it's like, oh, we can't have that. I mean, well, then you put me together with her and we sit there and you put the camera on both our eyes and you let the audience work out who's telling the fucking truth, is what you do if you're a good journalist. If you're a retard, you carry on pressing and treading on the person, the lower person, who you feel is the working class scumbag. And you try and get the working class scumbag to say what you want them to say. Now, this is what this guy was doing with me. He was ringing me. Oh, you spoke to Jude Law. You spoke to Jude Law. You must have asked if she was pregnant, if she was... No, I didn't, bitches. The only reason I rang Jude Law was to show off in front of a group of well-heeled women. I said, oh, look, I've been tasked by the Sun to interview Jude Law. I hadn't been tasked to interview him. I asked to ring him. It's a lot different, isn't it? But I just wanted to show off in front of him, so I rang and put him on speakerphone and said, oh, I work for a newspaper. I want to interview you, yada, yada. He said, you go through my agent. It's the best thing. But it was like, now I'll go through his agent, and then I'll be sitting with him next week somewhere. And oh God, these women that absolutely crumbled. It was like the Wicked Witch of the West. Oh, they really did. It was like, we got the mansion, we got the lifestyle, we got the husband we don't love who pays us to sit about and do nothing, but we don't meet with Jude Law. So I don't know, but I guess that was an act of aggression towards this woman from me. But I told this guy this as he was filming, it was not good enough. It's actually quite a funny anecdote, but no, not good enough for him. He wanted me to have asked Jude Law, was Sienna Miller pregnant? Now, I had been only once rung up by any newspaper anywhere, only once in my entire life, about Sienna Miller, and it was about, she has had an abortion, we want you to find out. Here's the clinic, ring it up, here's her friends, ring them, and here's Jude Law's number. And that is what they asked me to do. I remember it exactly. I remember I've only ever been asked once about Sienna Miller, who was going to play me in a movie. I'd remember. And I was outside my friend Hugh Burnett's house, and I was shocked, I was horrified because, and this feels bad talking about this individual, because actually I believe it's something that Rebecca Brooks shouldn't have known. And how did she know? I don't know. It was either phone hacking or some spiteful prat. It certainly wasn't, as, I don't know, I think Graham Johnson suggested putting her under surveillance. As far as I know, they didn't do that kind of thing. They didn't tail people in cars. Um, I remember talking to Anne Hardy, who I used to be friends with, Tom Hardy's mother, and she said the Daily Mail used to follow Tom round in cars. No, they didn't. They just didn't do it. They're not very good at surveillance, and they don't trust, um, unless it's a huge story, they don't trust outside agencies. If it's a huge story, then they mostly used serving SAS or ex-SAS to do surveillances, but they were massively expensive, and so it was only on a huge story would they use them. They didn't just tell people around. I believe that if people think they're tailed around, it's normally looky-loos. You know, I've seen celebrities myself in Richmond Park and driven slowly and stared and then pulled over in the car park and stared because it's what everybody does. It's like, oh my God, there's Mick Jagger. Let's stop the car. Pretend we're just sitting. And then you stare. And it's probably they look around and think, oh, is that the press? You know, like, no, it's just your fans. So this is what happens instead of getting to the reality of that. So I believe that in Sienna Miller's case, it was either, actually, I firmly believe it was phone hacking because John Boyle had worked up to 2000, told me he worked up to 2009 for the Sun. So they would have been phone hacking, and I believe it was from phone hacking because where do you find out that much intimate stuff that you shouldn't know? It's really appalling. And rather than the BBC exposing that and saying this is appalling that they knew that, they were, oh no, that jars with her testimony. You've got to say you checked out she was pregnant. Well, by that time she wasn't pregnant by the time they rang me, and it shocked me, the whole thing, that they knew. It shocked me, I guess, that she did it, and I feel bad saying that because it's her private thing, but it did. I didn't like to hear it, didn't like to hear whose it was. It reminded me, you know, it reminded me of certain issues in my own life, and I ran into my friend's house. I told him. He said, what are you going to do? I said, absolutely nothing. I believed that it wasn't a story. It's not a story. It could never be a story. So I believed it was for blackmail. I told him, I told my ex, Paul, about it. And I said, I believed it's blackmail. Because I believed it was for the, well, I wouldn't have gone anywhere near it anyway, because to ring somewhere like that is data thieving and it's illegal. I felt that it was also for blackmail, so I didn't go absolutely anywhere near it. Because I had Jude Law's number, I wrote it down in my file of facts, and I had it in my handbag when I was with those women, and so I did the showing off thing in front of them because they made me feel, you know, a little bit less than them. Or where do you live? We live up there, and yada yada. So I thought, oh, how about this? And I just did it, and it didn't work out very well. It really didn't work out very well because I stood up to say goodbye and they all ignored me, and I walked away. My friend was meeting me and I was in tears. So that went down like a ton of bricks. So I couldn't forget. I didn't forget that. And I did actually forget, and I was trying to explain to this guy interviewing me, and I said, I can't remember what happened with Jude Law, but I did contact him, and he said, oh, why would you forget? It's like, you know, he looked at me, why would you forget what you said? But what happened was I was very upset around that whole issue, so I'd kind of pushed it to the back of my mind, and I was thinking about that. Why would I possibly forget? And I thought, oh God, those bloody Sheen mother and baby group. That was it. Now I recall, and I remembered. So I rang him about it. He didn't want to hear it. Just didn't want to hear it. He wanted me to have checked out she was pregnant. and using my what I'd written down on remittance pregnancy checks. I put that because I didn't want to put the word abortion because it made me feel sick. Um, I'd been out in Belfast, down to Dundalk, written stories about the Real IRA for the Sunday Times, been on the front page of the Sunday Times, written about the UDA, got the only interview with John White and C Company when they split up, and the BBC wanted that interview too. I did it through my charisma and charm with dealing with people, and I was good. I put myself at risk. I went down the Shankill. I would sit with John White in a private room for to talk to him about the murder of John Gregg, and I was good. And I was the only journalist. I am the only journalist to get an interview with the Real IRA that's been, it's been online. We get inside the Real IRA. They wouldn't speak to anybody. I know Susie Breen dated one of them, one of the lower level ones, and so got some stuff on them. But this, the lower level ones, I dated one of the higher ones. Or is it just use my body to get an interview? I don't give a shit. What I wanted to do was get right into their knickers. I wanted to find out who they were, why they were keeping going when there was a Good Friday Agreement, what made them tick. I was curious. And the only way to do that is to really inhale them and get close up. So I use my body as a mode of finding out. And I found out they were a group of friends. They were just mates, and they went down to Guido on the Donegal, and there was a Good Friday Agreement meeting, and they walked out. These group of friends walked out. They were all mates. Campbell, McKevitt, Francie Mackey, Joe Dillon, friends, very tight friends. And they were also all, even though some of them lived in different areas, they were all linked with the South Armagh Brigade. The South Armagh Brigade is the toughest. They were the ones that imported weapons, and they really were the SAS of the IRA. So when we, the English, announced to everybody that we had this Good Friday peace agreement, we didn't have the IRA. We had the boys from Belfast who had long been doing nothing, but we didn't have South Armagh, which we didn't have Michael McKevitt, and these were the SAS, these were the weapons people. So really, they actually didn't have the IRA, and they were offering this group that they called the Real IRA. They were offering them everything, but they just didn't want to know. And I found out why they didn't want to know. They didn't, they wanted what they wanted, and they were actually, interestingly, most of the IRA and the INLA were left wing, whereas the Real IRA were right wing reactionary. They wanted Ireland for Ireland and nobody else. They were a little bit like the National Front. And they were interesting. They would never have betrayed anybody because they were friends, and so they were very tight knit. But the British did a good job of getting to them. They got somebody called Mooch Blair, who was a bomb maker, and it was around that Real IRA bomb. And I think that Omar bomb, I think that wasn't how it appears. I think that was done deliberately because it finished. It was a way of getting inside the Real IRA and finishing them off. Obviously, I was told by an agent, Peter Coyote, a call came into the News of the World. I was there, that there was these agents. I was tasked on it with someone else, and we went to meet these guys. One of them was Peter Coyote, and he was talking about, he came from South Armagh, I was an agent there, and I started talking about who I knew, and he got up to walk off, and I said, look, I just want to know, what went on around the Omar bomb. And he said Mooch Blair was an agent, same as he, and Mooch Blair had made the bomb, and he'd walked in when he was making it, and he was told by his handler think it was a Force Research Unit handler, that the British had followed the bomb car all the way to Omagh. Now, if you follow it, you've surely got eyes on it when it's parked in the wrong place. And so, how strange that there was this confusion herding the people actually into the bomb car. What happens, all that death and sympathy for the real IRA just hit rock bottom. They were finished. They were finished with that Omagh bomb. And then, of course, the BBC came in, John Ware, and got a picture of Campbell coming out of a South Almighty meet. That I was there. I'm actually in that movie that is on YouTube. Who bombed Omagh? But I'm blanked out. You can just see my body standing in the hallway, and so. But it's interesting. It had John Ware, the BBC, looking like he was all very sexy and dared to go to South Armagh. But I remember that day there was just so many guys in the car park, single guys in cars. And I went out, I said, who are you? They wouldn't tell me. They were a special branch there to protect the BBC. So it was a whole thing with the media doing that. Interesting how the BBC work. So this is what happened. This is what goes on. The public don't really get real news. They get a different version of events. And I think the News of the World was quite a powerful paper in that we printed that story, and I think it was probably shut down. I think that the phone hacking was an operation to shut it down, because I was interviewed by Company X, Michael Oatley's firm, given a dummy job of surveillance, and then called in. They then told me who they were, ex-MI6, serving really in a way. They just set up a group. It's called MI6's commercial arm along Buckingham Gate. Normally Christopher Steele was one of them, and they still do work for the government, but they're just like deniable, and they use agents. And so they called me in on the pretext of doing surveillance, and they said, what's happening in the News of the World? They're using the SAS, yada yada. And so they were up their arses, and they didn't like what they were doing. Now, John Boyle, okay, yes, I'd been out to dinner with him, but suddenly he was back around, which doesn't normally happen, and I know he works for CIX also. And he was like, introduce me. So I introduced him. He brought in all that crime. That always, is he really such a greedy scumbag as he brought back? I mean, maybe he is, but he was already moneyed up. But what shocks me is he wasn't mentioned in Davies' book. Now they're doing this ITV series where they're going to have Mulcair, this little Cockney guy who was very, very basic. And how are they going to have that? Oh, Mulcair came striding up to the News of the World and went, I've got a bit of crime here, will you use it? And that never would have happened. They wouldn't have trusted him. They would have thought, hang on, you're doing this. Won't you get nicked for it? Whereas because John Boyle brought it in, a very educated, moneyed up guy, they checked him out, they found out, he's got ski lodges and a £10 million house. And so they trusted it. And it was only because of that they trusted it. So this is how hacking came in. But sadly, don't think the ITV will give the public this, because Nick Davies has written the book like this and left out John. So again, the public will be fed bullshit, sadly, because of Nick Davies. No one else, because of Nick Davies. And I don't know why he's left out Boyle. Was he paid to? Was it because he wants to be the sexy guy who brought down the News of the World? No, he wasn't. I believe that it was shitting on John Boyle, nicking his office boy that brought them down. But also, there's a sniff of, was it all a setup? Was it MI6 running an operation using Boyle, bringing in all the crime, and then, let's find out about it. Let's let them nick his office boy. Now let's play the game as if it happened this way, but really it's us, getting rid of that paper. And not just getting rid of that paper, because let's face it, it went on as the Sun on Sunday, but it took its teeth out. And never again was any newspaper going to ever investigate anything. So that is what it did. It kind of slapped them. And editors went to prison. Andy Coulson went to prison. And it honestly had editors running shit scared. I remember having a story about a certain chocolate company, one of the big ones, one of the huge ones. We're not talking green and blacks. One of the big ones that supply kiddies, and they had salmonella all over their conveyor belts, and they didn't tell. Okay, yes, they'd had it in the past and announced it, but this recent one back then, they didn't tell anyone. They let the chocolate go out smeared in salmonella, and literally that can kill. And of course, it's children that eat chocolate mostly. And so I was tipped off about it from somebody. I want to do this story. Went to Dave Dillon of the Mail on Sunday, and what I'd done, I'd used what's known as blagging. Now, according to Graham Johnson, I'm the only person on the planet that's ever used that, even though the BBC blagged the shit out of me recently. And certainly Graham has blagged the shit out of me recently too. But apparently, when I do it, it's very, very naughty, and I should go to prison. Lying, apparently, you're not allowed to lie, even though he certainly lies all the time. Anyway, so I had gone to the chief executive of Cadbury, and oh shit, I've let it slip who it was. Oh God, I'm gonna get sued. Oh shit. Oh shit, I shouldn't. Oh shit, I shouldn't have said that. Maybe I can edit it out. Anyway, I had gone to the chief executive and blagged him, really. I pretended to be one of his science team. I found out the laboratory they used, to test any findings, and pretended to be one of them, and, said to him, oh, we found yada yada, extra stuff. I said, obviously about yet, and he then spilled everything, got it on tape, admitted that the chocolate had gone out. This is this is how many years ago? It's about 20 years ago, I suppose. Oh shit, I should have said it's Cadbury. Anyway, might not have been. My memory is bad. I mean, it could have been Galaxy. Oh God, is that still Cadbury? It might not have been Cadbury. My memory here isn't great. Anyway, I mean, I even eat Cadbury. It probably was one of the others. Anyway, so I gave it to Dave Dillon, complete with tape. Anyway, he was like, did you use blagging to get that? I said, of course I did. And he went, no. And he emailed me how he didn't want the story. And then he rang me and he said, I want you to respond to that. I said, but why should I? You've made it clear. And he goes, no, respond to that. Say, I understand that you do not want this story off me. What the fuck? I did it. I felt like not responding and just writing fuck off and then sending it to him, but I didn't. But it really pissed me off. This is what it did to editors in Fleet Street. I mean, and I know Dave Dillon. We literally snogged at one of Fiona Whitty's parties she used to have. So me and he knew each other really, really well. So he didn't need to come out. He just said, yeah, we don't want it. How about that? But no, I mean, if it's not in his paper, why does he need to just do that? But he said that. It was like that. I thought that's how much the phone hacking scandal scared the shit out of editors on Fleet Street, and investigations were never really done again. So it cut the balls off of Fleet. That's what it did. Didn't finish the news the way it cut the balls off editors on Fleet Street. They were all terrified that they would end up like Andy Coulson, and apparently Greg Miskiw he didn't get raped, but he got beaten up in his cell. So, because when they go into prison, they're like cops, aren't they? So a lot of them act like cops. Well, it's their own fault, really. They're not cops, but a lot of them act like journo coppers, and they do, work with the police, they get close to gangsters, they grass them up. It's their own fault. They go into prison, they get beaten up. It's their own fault, really. They're not police. You want to be a police officer, join the cops, have some balls. But they don't. They hide behind things, and then they grass up these big villains, the Addams family and shit like that. And then what do they expect? And so they're terrified of prison coming across these guys that would obliterate them. And so this ended investigations, and it was clever. So I don't believe it happened by accident. I really, truly don't. And it was strange. I was reading a David Icke book, and I know not many people like David Icke. They're like, oh, that's woo-woo. But in it, he said, and it was quite, he didn't know the ins and outs of what had gone on. And certainly at that point, I'd never spoken about it. But he said in his book, the phone hacking was an MI6. Actually, he said it's in one of his books, MI6 operation. And I thought, what? How the fuck does he know that? And I actually contacted him, ended up meeting him in the Priory in Jersey. I went and stayed in the Priory. What a beautiful hotel. And had lunch with him. He paid. Got a picture of that if anybody doesn't believe me. And talked to him about it, how he knew. He said it was obvious. And I thought, how is that obvious? It's not even obvious. I mean, I don't think it's obvious to the ITV who are going to put out the show about it. But thinking about it, and I know how these MI6 companies operate. They do operations, and they call them operations. I did one with, I did more than one, with Stuart Paul Robb of Knightsbridge Company Services. He always called it Operation this, Operation Bluebird, Operation Violet, and they were always big, long subterfuges where you went undercover as this person, that person. They love that kind of thing. And I believe that Boyle brought all that crime in, let Greg speak to his office boy, let them make love together and run off and, bring it in, and then let it sort of lie for a little while and then spring, ooh, look what you've been doing, knowing that Mulcair would keep records. No PI keeps records, but knowing he would keep records, and bang, you're nicked, everybody's arrested. The whole of Fleet Street shitting bricks. Ooh, mustn't ever investigate anybody. Threw baby out with bathwater. Didn't want to end up like Coulson, bending down in the shower. And so this it was brilliant, really, if you think about it. But the ITV are making this series about it, and I'm quite worried. I'm worried just because, being involved in the whole thing, because I brokered the deal between News of the World and John Boyle. I brought John Boyle in. I had been interviewed by Company X. They're not going to tell that story. Why? Because Nick Davis didn't put that in his book. Why didn't he put it in his book? If it was an operation by MI6 to destroy investigations on Fleet Street, little Nicky doesn't look all sexy and, oh, it was me. I slew I'm a left-wing hero. Look at me with my ginger hair and my ochre-coloured cords, and I'm so soft and sweet, and I'm soft and sweet, and yet I slayed a big right-wing organization like the News of the World. Look at me, I will take my bow now. Well, no, mate, you didn't. But he wrote his book to read like this, and now ITV have bought it. They're going to make it into a series. Well, they've made it, I think. They've done half of it. And his book told the story of this little working class company guy swaggering up to the News of the World going, do you want hacking? How about doing this little trick I know? And they went, okay, we'll pay you $100,000 a year for that. I mean, it just didn't happen like that. And he has mentioned Boyle in his book, but he could be the bin man. He's just like thrown his name in. Oh, yeah, just throw his name in. So he hasn't actually told the story of what actually went on. And, it pisses me off because actually it's not the story of hacking. Who suffers? I know the truth. I know who suffers? The public. The public get told shit again. And as it's a drama, it sinks into their brains. So they're like, oh, it's interesting. A PI came along and, oh, the PI was bad. And so all the PI did naughty things for them. And Nick Davis come in and they, oh, the good guy, the left-wing guy. And, they got the bad guys, the right-wing bad guys. Oh, it's great. Everyone clap now. It's the end. Yay! Nick Davies. Oh, he's really clever. I mean, what the actual fuck? It's nothing like that. But, it just pisses me off that the public are lied to. Because I'm a member of the public, and you constantly wonder what's going on in the world. Why are prices so high? Why are rents so high? Why are the poor made even poorer, the rich made even richer? Why is a packet of sausages £5? It's like, no, six even. What's going on? What's going on out in Ukraine? Is Russia going to win? Are we all going to speak Russian? Are we all going to speak Chinese even? Should I start learning Mandarin? What's happening? Who's in charge of all this? And we're constantly fed shit. Constantly fed shit. And I don't like it. And it happens on a lower level with all this. And these mainstream media people, they feed shit. Even boiling down, who cares about this petty little... Why are the BBC doing something on phone hacking when it's like, it's gone, and you're not going to tell the truth anyway? But they've wheeled out this different PIs, and they're not telling the truth about them. So I gave my testimony, and they didn't want it. It was interviewed by someone professional. They didn't want it. They wanted me to say that I had checked Sienna Miller's pregnancy when I fucking hadn't. I was only ever asked to work on a story, if you can call it that. Quite frankly, it's an insult. Quite frankly, you should look at Rebecca Brooks and say, why did she want to find out about someone's abortion? But no, didn't want that, not interested. Rebecca Brooks too high. And, you know, at the end of the day, one has to look at these people and say, are they linked at a higher level? You know, Murdoch and all that. It's like, oh, we're going to get Murdoch. Murdoch's the bad guy. And again, the public is supposed to go, oh, Murdoch's the bad guy. Get the... No. All the rich stick together. In programs like this, Murdoch's never, or even Rebecca Brooks is never revealed as being bad. No, it's always a smaller person. Ooh, bad. This smaller bad person. Like, you know, the poor schmuck, Glenn Mulcair. Bad. That was a bad PI. Ooh. You know, it's like... just fed shit, really. And they just didn't want to hear that. And they even got to the point, the BBC got to the point of abusing me over it. They just didn't want to hear my truth, put it out there. They began, and I wondered why they wanted a second and third interview and why this creep rang me non-stop. He wanted me to say that I did something I didn't do. He wanted me to say that I checked this pregnancy. Or you rang Jude Law to say, was she pregnant? Well, it was dead by then, so how could I have said that? But no, you did that. Come clean, until he drove me absolutely crazy. That guy drove me crazy. And for shame on him. What an absolute abortion of a human being to do that. To call yourself journalist when you don't actually want to know the truth. You want to people please this person over there because you want to fuck them or whatever. Or you want, I'm going to rise my career because I'm going to people please hacked off and people please that celebrity. And, oh, I'll be in with the celebrities. What a turd you are. What an absolute turd. Don't call yourself a journalist. You're just a turd. You're a toad. You're an ass licker. It's not a journalist. You're a PR person. Just like Jim Waterston from The Guardian. If you're PR, have it on your badge. PR person. You're not a journalist. Journalists try and find out truth. James Hanning is certainly friendly with Hacked Off, but when he interviewed me, did he try and get at me? He certainly hardballed me over some frigging email that I'd written. There was quite a simple explanation behind that. That is what you do when you're a proper journalist. You don't lick already. Oh, I'm going to fight hard for Hacked Off. He didn't have that in his mind. He had, well, I'm going to question. I'm going to ask hard questions, and I'm going to produce this, and if Christine can't answer it, then but I could answer it. And that really pissed off BBC because they weren't interested in the truth. They just wanted their little version. I had to play a fucking role. So they were like, well, we need you to come back again. And they blagged me, even though we're so against blagging, they blagged me. We want long shots of you in your dress walking around the lake. Well, like, fuck they did. Oh, they took me feeding the ducks. What do they want feeding the fucking ducks for? He blagged the shit out of me. Oh, so you're so lovely with animals. Oh, you're so beautiful. Let all the public want to see that. I knew he was blagging me, but I thought, okay, you can tell me I look beautiful a few times. And what else did he say? He went, have you got a special way with animals? And I'm like, if you want to think that, okay. more blagging, but you know, I was aware of that. And I even threw something in because James Hanning was ringing me, talking to me, and I thought, I'm going to see how quickly, if I say something, goes from there back to Hacked Off, and then how long it takes to get to the BBC, and it's like a snake. Anyway, it just took seconds, because I think it was even the next day, this thing got back, and this BBC guy, when he had me by the lake with the duck, asked it to me. I actually pissed myself because I thought, whoa, it took seconds. That's hilarious. And I thought, you boys are naughty. You know, you shouldn't be working for Hacked Off. You shouldn't be trying to get money for your mates and using the BBC to do that. It's dirty, you know. But I laughed, but actually I should have cried, because it's just, nah, it's not right. It's not right. Anyway, so this schmuck stepped on me because he didn't like, I didn't realise at the time, I didn't understand it. I thought he must be so in love with Sienna Miller that he's doing this. But then an intelligent journalist came along and pointed out, he said, are you kidding? If your testimony goes against Sienna Miller's testimony, they won't want it. And I just couldn't get my head around that. To be honest, I still can't get my head around that. Why wouldn't you want to put out honest journalism? Why? And why not? Even if you don't have me sitting in the same room as Sienna Miller, it's not going to blow my socks off. Christ, I don't even like her as an actress. If you're not going to have that, you can go from one to the other. Surely you can leave my testimony. That's what I'm saying. I even got angry at a certain point. Leave it in, yeah? And then put it out there. And then let the public decide. You don't curate. Anyway, because he hadn't got what he wanted, he rang and he abused me. And he behaved like Columbo on crack. Just ringing me all the time on a withheld number, which I picked it up. And it could have been the school with my son, so you have to pick up withheld numbers. And he used to be silent for a little while and then sort of burst into it. Sienna Miller and Jude Law. It was fucking weird. And it literally, there was something about it, and I think it must have gone back to when I was a child and my mother. If something went missing from the school, I remember there was a fox fur taken. It was a girl called Susan Turner had nicked this fox fur from, I went to quite a posh girls' school, St Mary's in Pinner, and somebody who owned the fox fur, which was in the drama department, had complained to the police, believe it or not. This is appalling, actually, when I think of what happened. Anyway, the school gave out addresses, and over the weekend, the police, bizarrely, this should never have happened now I think of it, went round everyone's house, and I got home. How old was I? Can't remember. Frigging just before I went back into care. 12? Yeah, 12. And they went round, and literally, I'd been round my friend's house, came back, my mother was sitting on the floor crying with all my clothes pulled out of the closet, crying because the police had been round about this fox fur. And I said straight away, Susan Turner has it. This spoilt bastard, arrogant as the day is long, had taken it. And if I'd have been there, the police had been there, I'd told them straight away. I have no qualms in grassing. And gosh, why did I start telling the story of the bloody fox fur? I can't actually remember. I got so sucked into that memory of that fox fur. It brought me back to, my mother still didn't believe that I didn't have any part in it. I remember Susan Turner picking it up, swanking it up, and then next thing seeing her at the bus stop with it, and I said, you've just taken that. Any fool could have told you it was expensive and valuable, and what the fuck? It's hardly like nicking a pencil. There was no telling her. She was very up herself, and but my mother, I didn't even like Susan Turner, but my mother seemed to think that I was involved anyway, if not the ringleader, and I was such a shy, quiet girl, wouldn't say boo to a goose, and she used to tell the neighbours that I was evil, and she had nothing to back that up. And after I started writing to Ian Brady when I was older, but then that was it. All she writes to Ian Brady, and it was almost a relief. It was almost like there you are. Then I'll do something evil, and if it is evil, and because he was called evil, I thought, you're actually evil because I'm not evil, and they call adoptees evil. So that was that quandary, and why I started writing to Brady. But she then used that. Oh, you're evil. It was almost like this guy, this BBC producer, is it? I'm not going to name him. I don't like his name. I want to forget he's even been born. Anyway, he treated me like my mother. It was really weird. It was really weird. It was like I was telling him, and I didn't even need to tell him that I had rung Jude Law. I didn't need to tell him that, but I did. I thought, do you want? I didn't understand what he wanted, and I thought, do you want more colour here? And I thought, well, I'll tell you this part of it, even though it makes me feel like a wanker. I mean, I was literally trying to spite these women from this mother and baby group. It makes me seem like an arsehole on TV, but you're missing colour. I'll tell you it. So I did. 1 second. And I wasn't enough for him. He went, you asked Jude Law about her pregnancy. Now, there was no pregnancy at that point. There was no pregnancy when that call came in from Chris Ferrer. And I swear on my son's life, it was the very first time ever that I had ever been asked about Sienna Miller, ever. And when that call came in, when I was sitting outside my friend Hugh Burnett's house, the baby did no longer exist, yeah? So all the stuff about pregnancy. She wasn't pregnant anymore. By the time that call reached my eardrums, I wasn't pregnant anymore, yeah? Why I put down pregnancy, I didn't want to answer why the person. Right, I should have been allowed in court when that trial was going on, rather than Graham Johnson saying this, that, and the other, and fuck knows what he said, but something like the Beast of Bodmin Moor, I'm guessing. Sorry, I'm going back to the time when he told Rebecca Brooks he'd taken a picture of the Beast of Bodmin Moor when actually it was a jaguar in the zoo. Cost Murdoch millions. The judge was horse shitted too. He was urinated on, yeah? Now, I don't think that's right. There's lack of respect there for the judge. I should have been hauled in, given my account, and truth should have been flushed out. Was that information hacked? I should never have known it. I felt abused being told it. Yeah? So thinking naively, like a prat, because sometimes I am a prat, I thought the BBC wanted the truth. Maybe even to expose the big guys, but no, you see, rich and rich don't ever fight each other, yeah? They don't ever. Unless it's political, okay? Then they do, but mostly they don't, and they don't attack each other, yeah? They didn't care about what Rebecca Brooks' part was in any of this. Whenever I mention her name, it's like, okay, not interested in her. What did you do? The working class scapegoat, a bit like Andy Coulson. So Rebecca Brooks, as you'll find, is an untouchable. There's no bad stuff written about her online. So anyway, he kept on like a Columbo on crack by ringing me and saying this and saying, you'd asked Jude Law about pregnancy, come clean about it and all this kind of stuff. Oh, God. And it was weird. I felt weirded out because, they said to me, this is BBC want the truth and tell it, and this is your chance. James Hanning had said this to me. This is your chance. So apparently it was my chance. And I'm all about the truth. Why I'm all about the truth? Because I'm a spiritualist and I deal with spirit. Now, if you are a liar, spirit doesn't like it. Because when you come out of your body, when you die, you talk by telepathy. You can't hide your thoughts. And this interesting point, anytime anybody busts out as a
spiritualist is able to rent the veil between spirit and the physical, the first thing you realize is spirit can hear your thoughts. So if a spirit or a spectre appears to somebody that can interact with them, the first thing you know is they can talk to you via telepathy. You can just think, oh, what are you doing here? It's a ghost. And it will say, no, calm down, yada, yada. And so what happens when you become somebody like this, when you bust out of somebody like this, when you interact with spirit, you learn that they can hear whatever you're thinking. So when you're getting used to being this kind of person, the first thing you do is start thinking hateful thoughts. And like, can they hear this? Piece of shit. And they can. So it's like you kind of have to get really honest. First of all, you have to mature up. Secondly, you have to get really honest, because with all of us, every single human being, our thoughts aren't private. Spirit can hear our thoughts. So when your dead mother dies and you're thinking, standing over her grave thinking, oh, scumbag, glad they're dead, she can hear you, okay? And human beings don't like that because they think they're very private and nobody can hear. But sadly, everyone can hear. The higher entities can hear, the lower ones can hear. That's why people that are very angry, that think murderous thoughts or watch lots of pornography and then think about pornography, they attract demonic entities, because the demonic entity is attracted to that and it will amplify that. And that's how serial killers get kicked off. So being a spiritualist, being a medium, being a psychic, being a clairvoyant, my modus operandi is honesty. I have to be. I've had my abilities increased because I am honest. So my thing, even though it might be unpalatable, is to tell the truth. And sometimes I say things and, you get criticised. And, like I said, I was attracted to Kenneth Bianchi. And then I got trolled underneath the YouTube that I've said it. Just want to make that clear for the person who did troll me. He's divided up into altars. I didn't say I was attracted to the altar that did the murders. I said I was attracted to the innocent side, just to make that clear. So ignorance on that person's part. Honesty. So I wanted to be honest to the BBC. I'm of a certain age that I'm in the winter of my life. Soon I will actually go into spirit myself. I don't want to be a bullshitter, because in spirit it's almost like you fart all the time. It's just not good, and somebody that hurts people and is dishonest too. I mean, I often look at Graham Johnson and I just worry about him. He's in the winter of his life. He operates in such a dishonest way that he is storing up a lot of shit for himself, that he will either get reincarnated into a really hard life where he's somebody that gets abused by someone in a position of power. So he finally learns the lesson of, don't abuse people just because they're weaker than you. Don't do it. And especially just to earn money or just to aggrandize yourself with famous people and stuff. It's not right. So he will come back around as someone who's abused. I know it. I actually feel sorry for him and that. Same with that producer. He will come back as someone who's abused. And we come back and we learn that lesson. Same as, say, a teenager commits suicide. He will come back round as the parent of a teenager that commits suicide. So he will learn it's wrong. So our object of being alive is a little bit like being in a video game. When you die, you come out of the video game. But when you're in the video game, it's all about self-love. So whatever situation you get put in, whether it's with parents that don't love you, in a job where you're treated like shit, in a job where you're, have an amazing life. This is another thing this BBC guy said. Sienna Miller has suffered. She's really suffered by the press. Now, I'm not being funny, but she hasn't suffered. Again, someone like that, for instance, who's had a highly privileged life, a life of a lot of love, support, the best of the best, fame, beauty, everything, intelligence, blessed by gifts, respect to the community. I don't think the BBC have respected her. I think if you treat someone so much with kid gloves, you're lying to them. So she's been lied to, treated not well. Even that court case, she did deserve compensation, but for someone intruding and spying on a pregnancy termination, which is actually so intimate and private, it should have been exposed. But because of arse lickers around her, it's never exposed. So she got money for spying on a pregnancy, but they weren't ever spying on a pregnancy. They were spying on a pregnancy termination, which is far worse. She probably should have got double, 3 times, 4 times more, 5 times more, 5 million even, because it's fucking nasty. But no, because of the arse lickers around her, that was never flushed out. Too busy to quickly people please. It was me, I was the one. The Nick Davis syndrome, I was the one who did the good thing. So she has been horseshit too, which I suppose has been really good looking, etc., etc. That will happen. But, so she will probably come around next time as someone, a plain woman, that is treated, not this fawning way by men. And we all do that. And so it's the same souls that are reincarnated over and over and over. And the position is to love yourself no matter what. And that is the goal of life, to love yourself no matter what, to realize that you're a divine spark, not to love yourself because you're beautiful or what you've achieved, but to really deeply love and respect something deeply inside you. That is the goal of our life here on this very, very low level. And then when we do that, we get off samsara and we can escape life. Once we honor that divine spark and recognize we're God right in our heart, then we get to go on to the next level, which is a better level. For sure, it's none of the shit that goes on here and the pain and the suffering. So we escape that wheel of samsara once we have that divine spark of love. And so it's very important that you tell the truth. It's very important that you... And what happened with this BBC arsehole, he pushed me. He didn't honour me as a human being. I mean, I guess he thought, you're a plain woman. I guess he thought, you're a working class woman. I guess he thought, you ain't got much money, have you, you sad little cunt. I guess he thought, you're living in rented, aren't you, you scumbag. And he then pushed me, you're not telling the truth, bitch, slag, whore, whatever was going through his head. I wish he had come out and said those things rather than abuse me in the way he did. It was like, you're not telling the truth, you're a liar, but not saying it, but pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing until finally he made me react. I had a breakdown, ended up down my parents' house trying to get in, and they've been dead for years. And I have never been in that position, and I've been in some hard places with hard people. I've been down in South Armagh, for God's sake, and I'm English. And if people think I didn't have a hard time in South Armagh, when I first went in that, when John Ware was there, protected by the special branch, I was there on my own. And I actually had Liam Campbell grill me. It was the first time I met him. What the fuck are you here for? Well, just take her out there and, all this kind of shit. And I got in cars with those guys and went driving off into the dark countryside and pushed myself, And Brian Cathcart goes on about, oh, not journalists and people work for the tabloids aren't journalists and this kind of thing. When did he ever get out of putting his ass on the seat and lecturing? When did he ever get in the car with a real IRA commander and go careering off into the countryside? And also that Jim Waterston, what did he call me? He called me a blagger in the thing. I tell you, I'm going up to that High Court when they have the when they do the 4 days of the Daily Mail and the Doreen Lawrence, and I'm going to say to him, hey Jim, you call me a blagger in your poxy little story again, I'm going to chin you. And it's just appalling, because Jim Watson's never done that. Jim Watson's never got out of his little seat. Jim Watson's a PR person. Again, they have no respect for other people, no respect for what they've done. They just want to lick around others. They're not honest. They're not devoted to the truth. They don't want honesty. And one bottom line is what they are not journalists. They do not need to call themselves journalists because they're fucking not. So anyway, I just wanted to talk about the BBC today because I just feel dirty that I ever had any involvement with them whatsoever. They're dirty, and they're dirty because they're stupid, you know. And if they're stupid, I just think an ill wind blows through them, and that was why they stood back and let Jimmy Saville sexually abuse all those kids. They just don't give a shit. Thick people, willfully stupid, are actually only devoted to themselves. So if they heard about a working class kid getting, you know, touched up, who cares? Let him do what he wants. And that is how they operate. So people might have some confusion about that, and they might, oh, I don't really understand it. I don't understand it. Why would they? Yada, yada, yada. It's because they don't give a shit, you see. It's because they're devoted to their level. They see themselves as upper middle class. They see you, if you're working class or lower middle, as a peasant, as shit, as you're not human, as you don't matter. And that is how they rock and roll. And that is why they let Jimmy Savile abuse those kids. They don't care about those kids. They see them as, oh, if he wants to relieve himself, why shouldn't he? Yeah, he works hard, so if he wants to touch up that little girl over there, she's working class, doesn't matter. Or that little boy, doesn't matter. That's how they roll. So if you had confusion around that, I just want to clear it up for you. And I know because of my own experience. It's like a prejudice. It's like, you know, oh, doesn't matter. They're black. They're not real. It's like you're white. You're not real. You're not upper middle class. You're not a person. Yeah. It's like, should be addressed, that classism thing, because it's just how England operates. And it's really bad. It should be outmoded. Everything's being outmoded. This is being outmoded. You're not allowed to say this, not allowed to say. What about classism and how it just runs like a hatred through our society? And when it's facilitated by the likes of the BBC and the mainstream media, then it's going to always be there, you know? It's always going to be there. I spoke to that ITV producer making this thing about the series about Nick Davis, and I actually heard it. I can tell people's caliber by talking to him. He seemed like and I thought, how refreshing. ITV, clearly better than BBC. He was an intelligent man. I could tell he was listening. I could tell he cared. And I thought, yeah, listen to the difference. You know, ITV must be safe. It must be all safer, certainly in the BBC. The BBC need to maybe walk away now. We don't really need them. We've got Netflix. Anyway, it's just not like how it used to be, and people think, because I grew up on the BBC, I like to think it's decent, and I like to think it represents the people, and, you know, it's lovely and sweet and all that. But it's not. It's bad. It's abusive. It hides abusive people, very, 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 very highly abusive people that don't care about other humans. And if you've got people that don't care about other humans running something like that, it's just going to be dirty, and it is dirty. I even sometimes when I see a film on BBC I want to watch, I feel dirty watching it because I thought it's like paying into them in some kind of way, and I've had the experience and I know. And so watching that Jimmy Savile thing last night, I understood it in a way that I wouldn't have understood it if I didn't know the BBC close up and how they operate. And it's just seeing these people as not human. And how did that happen? How did it happen? But I think it's always happened. It's like India having a caste system. I think it's always happened, and you only have to be on the receiving end of it, and you can go for a long time not being on the receiving end of it. I was pretty old when I first experienced that kind of hate. It was when my son was being bullied at school, and it was a middle class school, and I remember talking to a woman I'd seen cycling down the street, and I said to her, oh, what a lovely little school called Orlands Park in St Margaret's. I said, what a lovely, have you seen that lovely little primary school at the end of a country lane? And she went, I'm not sending my kids there. And I was like taken aback. I went, why? And she says, cliquey. And I didn't listen. I just didn't listen. But yup, in these schools, in areas, well-to-do areas, they get very cliquey. The people there, their children go like, maybe they have a child and then there'll be a few years gap. They'll have another one. They want it so it's run like a private school. And to be like that, they don't want any riffraff there. And soon I remember going there, and I was working for the Sun at the time. I really should have got a fake little wedding ring and put it on my finger. That's all it would have taken, and just drop in some male name. I don't know, Stephen or I don't know, Christopher or something. Oh, Christopher's at work. What does he do? Banker. That's all I had to do. It would have taken me 2 seconds, but I wasn't aware of all that hatred, and consequently, my son was bullied by this child who had never known his parents. He had only known the Polish nanny, and so he was eaten up with resentment and anger. And I always said, as this child got older, he'd be in trouble. And of course, now he is in trouble. Now he's in the teenage years. He wasn't offered help at all. He was very upset when nanny went back to Poland. That to him was mum. And so, of course, he's going to end up sick. But they didn't want to listen. No, they wanted it to be the working class child. And that is what goes on in our society. And I never experienced it. I always, I suppose, saw myself as middle class. But then when I was sitting opposite the head, who had taken the side of this little clique of mothers, of which this other child was one, and Pip, she was called, short for Philippa. And I suddenly felt it. It was a really weird feeling. And I suddenly thought, I know what it's like to be black. That really just popped into my head. And I thought, whoa, it must be so hard. It's like a prejudice, but it's not spoken. You just feel it. You just suddenly feel that the other person thinks that you're not their equal. And it's really weird. I felt it like a physical feeling, like a visceral thing. And I kind of wanted to stand up and go, hang on, I'm a fucking journalist here. What are you? You're a head teacher in an infants. It was like almost like a physical attack, but it was silent. And that was my first experience of being literally up against that glass wall of class dividing, and that hate. It's a hate. Make no mistake, if you haven't felt it, lucky. But I felt it on that day. And I was quite an old age, quite knocking on. I wasn't in my 20s. And I'd never experienced it before. It's pretty bad. I think it's wielded mostly by women, but also wielded mostly by men that are heavy on their feminine side. Certainly the BBC guys are not. It's not a lot of testosterone there. Absolutely hardly any. And it's wielded by then as a kind of a spite, and it's pretty horrible to be on the receiving end. And I think for sure that's why Jimmy Saville was let go ahead, because his victims were working class kids, in those hospitals, and they were dependent on charity, and he knew that as well. I would say that he could manipulate them and use them like animals, and that's the way it is in England. And I don't know. I was talking to someone the other day and asking what would happen if Russia won, and then, would China take over? Is this what's going to happen? And I said, would we all speak Russian? Or maybe we'd all speak China. And he was like, hang on, we'd probably get herded into camps. We probably wouldn't have enough food. And all you're caring about is whether we'd speak Chinese or Mandarin. And I kind of thought, hang on, why am I just focused on that? But in a happy way, not like, it was like I really wanted it. And I kind of realized if we're washed over by another race, say the Chinese, for instance, if they come in and kind of wash through us, we will take on their communism. And although I kind of believe in a capitalist society, even though I'm poor, I certainly did push myself and try. I've written books. I pushed. That's what I've spent my life doing, pushing. That's why when Jim Waterston calls me blacker, it's then I've been working my bollocks off, love. It's like just to have that class thing be be if China washed through us and made us like they are, it's like the class system would go. I don't know if they have it. I mean, I lived in LA for a long time, and it's based on what you've done. It's not really. And the people that haven't done anything, the people that say want to write a movie and they want to be a famous actor, actress, they're still respected. They're still respected. The person like Demi Moore, Bruce Willis, they're respected more. But it's like, we've done it, but you can do it. You do it. You try and do it. That's what LA is like. And it's so exciting because you're not treated like dirt. But come back to England and that hate is in the air. That hate. And it's really not nice. And if you've been the victim of it, and it hasn't even got a name. I mean, you could say, oh, so she's racist, and there's a name for it, but there's not a name for the working class, middle class. There's not a name for that. And it's only going to get worse because I've noticed everything's expensive, so that makes the middle classes pulsate whether we can afford to eat. And we all own our own houses, but you guys down there, you can't even afford to rent or buy a packet of sausages. What kind of animals are you? And so it's just going to get worse. And I don't know. So I just thought if China comes in and washes us through, they will wash that away. And maybe it needs to be washed away. Maybe it just needs to be washed away.